Based on the true story of Britain's most notorious serial killer. The Black Panther.
I am a big fan of this program.
Well, this might be the blackest Black Jeopardy yet!
In my review of Captain America the Winter Soldier, I said that movie was the best in the MCU, although my personal favorite was still the Avengers. While my personal favorite hasn't changed, after rewatching Black Panther, I think this is probably the best of the whole franchise now. Slightly under 2 years after his excellent role in Captain America Civil War, audiences were introduced to the world and characters of Black Panther. It was the final solo movie before Avengers Infinity War, and the third feature film from the outstanding director Ryan Coogler. It had an amazing cast, a score from Ludwig Göransson, a screenplay from Coogler himself, as well as Joe Robert Cole, the writer of The People vs. O.J. Simpson. Basically, it had everything going for it. So would this go on to be another example of a big corporation throwing its money at a bunch of big names to churn out a decent but disposable distraction for some quick cash, or would it really be a collaboration of great artists working with the resources and freedom they deserve? I think we all know what my answer to that is, and I think most others had that answer too. It broke a ton of box office records, won a ton of awards, and was one of the best reviewed superhero movies of all time, being the first to be nominated for a Best Picture Oscar. Side note, I didn't see any of the other nominees, so I can't say whether I think Black Panther deserved a win over Green Book, but I do think Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse deserved a nomination, and my favorite movie of 2018 was Annihilation. And it won 3 others. This movie was so big, it felt like that if it existed wholly outside the MCU, it would still be one of the biggest movies ever. But that's all just how people reacted to it. I'm here to talk about how I reacted to it. And here's the story that I'll be reacting to. T'Challa has just taken over as King of Wakanda, the most technologically advanced nation on Earth, thanks to a massive mine of vibranium, that metal that makes up Captain America's shield. To keep other countries from invading to take the vibranium, Wakanda puts on a front to the outside world that they are an impoverished, developing country. When the son of a Wakandan spy, who was appalled by the living conditions and systemic oppression of Black Americans, tried to take the throne and use Wakanda's power to start black revolutions all over the world, T'Challa and his allies must defend their nation, save the world, and also ponder whether or not Wakanda remaining isolationist is the right thing to do. So yeah, remember how The Winter Soldier was one of the few Marvel movies that was actually about a real-world issue, that being the NSA spying on American citizens suspected of terrorism, something the movie directly compared to the actions of Nazi Germany? Or how about Thor Ragnarok and its anti-colonial message? Even Captain Marvel addressed the refugee and immigration crises in the world. All of those seem completely apolitical next to Black Panther. It's not making any statements you haven't seen before, but I bet you haven't seen him in a $200 million big-budget Disney blockbuster action movie before. This movie doesn't even use a made-up allegory for the issues it's addressing. There's no secret hidden bonus Nazis, or shape-shifting aliens, or goddess of death. This is a movie where the first scene depicts the slave trade, and the second scene opens with footage of the Rodney King riots right before a guy talks about how much it sucks that Black American civil rights leaders get assassinated while poor Black communities deal with too many drugs and guns and police brutality and discrimination.
Our ministers of law enforcement are only here to protect us.
So if a movie is supposed to get points for being about something, Black Panther gets those points. But being about something isn't the same as being good. So is Black Panther good? While it's by no means perfect, the characters are certainly terrific. Michael B. Jordan plays N'Jadaka, alias Eric Stevens, nicknamed Killmonger. He hates the Wakandan government for remaining isolationist when they could be helping poor and oppressed Black communities around the world. While Killmonger correctly identified this problem, his proposed solution is full-on villainous. He wants to arm these Black communities with weapons so they can rebel in every country of the world until Wakanda rules everything. If the movie was somehow not clear enough that he's become the same oppressive colonist that he hates so much, he says the sun will never set on the Wakandan Empire, a reference to the massive empire colonial England once had. So Killmonger is too far gone to be a good guy, even killing his completely non-character girlfriend, but his motivation is rooted in an issue that actually persuades our hero, T'Challa, to change his mind on Wakanda's isolationist policy. More on that later, but motivation is only one aspect of a character. Another is personality, and Michael B. Jordan completely nails that here. He's fantastic for any role that isn't, well, Fantastic Four, and this is no exception. Despite his skills as an elite killing machine, his philosophy of a rebel-turned-would-be king, you never forget for 1 second that he grew up with a normal life in America, so whenever he isn't giving a villainous speech, he's acting like a regular guy. It humanizes him in a way not afforded to most MCU villains. My favorite living actor, Andy Serkis, plays a secondary villain, Ulysses Klaue. Andy Serkis is of course mostly known for his motion capture performances, but here he proves that he can steal the show even when it's just him on camera, which is kind of a weird thing to say about an actor, but with him it makes sense. Anyway, while Killmonger is complex and layered, Claw is a maniacal, racist pirate. He calls Wakandans savages even though he knows they're the most technologically advanced nation on Earth. This guy is magnetic, everything he does is hysterical, and I really wish he lived to be the villain for a full movie. But if this is all we get here, then I appreciate his small role in Avengers 2 a little more now. Martin Freeman plays Everett Ross. Some people write this character off as a dopey American dude for all the Wakandan characters to look cool in comparison to.
And as always, white people.
Which he is, but there's more to him than that. In fact, I think he's one of the most important characters in the movie. Shuri calls him a colonizer since he works for the US government. M'Baku won't even let him speak since he's an outsider. We keep getting told for the first part of the movie that Wakandans don't trust outsiders, but with Ross we get to see it, and he proves them all wrong, going so far as to be willing to sacrifice his own life to help them at the end. He's probably a big reason Wakanda decided to open up to the world. Oh, and he saved Nakia's life, so that was cool of him. Nakia herself is one of my favorites in the film, to the point where her absence from Avengers Infinity War kind of disappointed me, although I can easily assume she was on a spy mission. Nakia is a war dog, performing missions outside of Wakanda in secret, like freeing victims of human trafficking. Lupita Nyong'o represents this side trying to convince T'Challa to open up and help the rest of the world. She says Wakanda is powerful enough to help others and protect itself at the same time, and I definitely believe any nation is safe with Nakia around. Letitia writes, Shuri also represents the anti-isolationist side, preferring innovation over tradition. She's a very funny little sister to T'Challa and also acts as the film's cue, providing all the gizmos and explaining how everything works. As if her being the smartest inventor in the Marvel Cinematic Universe wasn't enough to make you like her, she fights with Panther gauntlets that shoot lasers. General Okoye is the leader of the Dora Milaje because what is essentially Wakanda's secret service is made up entirely of women who all fight like Black Widow. Okoye, played by Danai Gurira, is somehow even cooler here than she is on The Walking Dead, representing the side that wants to preserve tradition and not risk Wakanda being exposed to the world's problems. Angela Bassett plays Queen Ramonda. So, Angela Bassett has now played the director of the Secret Service, the director of the CIA in 2 different properties, Amanda Waller, the Queen of Voodoo, and the Queen of Wakanda. Whatever her agent is getting paid, it's not enough, because Bassett is consistently being cast in roles that are perfect for her these days. Daniel Kaluuya plays W'Kabi, turning in a good performance as always, but he isn't given nearly as much to work with here as he is in his bigger roles. Obviously, I mean, he's a supporting player here, but this guy has enough talent to warrant a far larger role in the sequel, I think. He goes from being T'Challa's best friend to turning on him after T'Challa fails to apprehend a criminal that has evaded capture for like 30 years, even though T'Challa had only been trying for 1 day. I think this turnaround was far too quick to be believable, no matter how much he hates Claw. Winston Duke plays M'Baku, leader of the Jabari tribe, which does not recognize the Wakandan king's authority. The movie only implies it once, but I like the implication that the reason the Jabari did not join the 4 other tribes of Wakanda is because they all worship Bast, and the Jabari worship Hanuman.
What is, they wonder why everybody pregnant?
Yes, yes. Bad things happen when you kick Jesus out your house.
One nice detail is that while the Wakandans all speak Xhosa, I should probably learn how to pronounce that. Give me a second. Okay, so it looks like it can be pronounced Hosa or Kosa. I don't know. Anyway, the Wakandans speak Kosa, the Jabari speak Igbo. Forrest Whitaker plays Zuri, a wise man who's killed by the villain after revealing a secret of great importance to the hero. So, kind of exactly like when he was Saw Gerrera. Do I need to say anything? He's Forrest Whitaker, he's amazing. I want to give a quick shout out to Florence Kasumba, who barely does anything in this movie, but was actually the first member of the Dora Milaje that we ever saw, back in Captain America Civil War. John Connie plays T'Challa's father T'Chaka, and oh my goodness was this terrific casting. John Connie is a South African who opposed apartheid and was a victim of police brutality. He and his son, who plays young T'Chaka in the flashback scenes by the way, were the ones who inspired the filmmakers to adopt Kosa as the Wakandan language. Finally, we come to the hero, T'Challa, the Black Panther, played by Chadwick Boseman. While Boseman is perfect here like he is in everything, I think T'Challa's character is actually a weak link in this film.
Hell nah.
Not his personality, as he is three-dimensional with breaking points of anger, things that make him sad, and he's laid back around his friends and sister, but with his arc. See, the whole movie is about T'Challa changing his mind from wanting to keep Wakanda isolationist to wanting to open it up to the world, but he never really has a moment where he learns just how awful staying isolationist is. The thing that definitively changes his mind is when he learns that his dad left a child behind in Oakland, which... yeah, that's obviously terrible, but that doesn't prove isolationism is bad any more than anything else does. It's not like isolationism is what kept them from taking the boy back to Wakanda. The boy wasn't a CIA agent like Ross, he was an orphan. They wouldn't have risked info about Wakanda leaking to the world if they did take him. Let me compare it with another superhero, Wonder Woman, who learns near the end of the movie that even though she thought she was fighting for the right side, she's just fighting for one of 2 sides in a completely futile waste of human life. This crushes her emotionally, but she learns from Steve Trevor that saving innocent lives is something worth fighting for, and that's what she does from then on. T'Challa doesn't have to overcome any personal flaw or misconception to change change his mind. He just changes it because he finds out that his dad, who had the same opinion, also left an orphan behind. The action in the movie varies. The first fight against the human traffickers nicely establishes all of Black Panther's standard powers, but it's dark and interspersed with flashing lights from the guns, so it's not that easy to see everything that happens. The fight in the casino and the following car chase are both excellent, even featuring one of those showy scenes made to look like one long take. Why don't more movies do this? Every time a movie does, everybody talks about how great it is. You'd think Hollywood would have us all sick of these by now, but they're still rare. Anyway, the best action scenes are the two duels for the throne. These are brutal, violent fights with a lot more impact behind the hits than you feel in most superhero movies. The finale starts out great, but ends on a low point in terms of action. With Black Panther, the Dora Milaje, W'Kabi's tribe, the Jabari, war rhinos, spaceships, Nakia, Shuri, and Killmonger all fighting, it's varied and exciting at first. But then T'Challa and Killmonger break off and have a final battle on some train tracks. While most of the CGI in this movie is good, or at least fine, this was not given the time needed to make it look convincing. The story developing here, the dialogue, and the acting are all great, so it's still a good scene overall, but this is the biggest movie franchise in the world owned by the richest studio. There's no excuses for CGI that isn't at least as good as some medium-level stuff like we get in Jurassic World or something. I also don't like how Killmonger is defeated. It's not as bad as the villain taking themselves out, but T'Challa just outfights him. It's not a willpower thing. T'Challa doesn't have to understand his opponent in a way he didn't before. He doesn't have to think of a creative solution or find out something about himself. He just stabs Killmonger before Killmonger stabs him. At least it's followed by a scene that cements Killmonger as the best villain in the MCU movies. I say movies because Mariah is still a thing. As for the movie's structure, it's also got some highs and lows. The movie does an excellent job taking the gadgets and high society intrigue from a spy movie, the lore and large-scale battles of a fantasy movie, the technology and vehicles of a sci-fi movie, and the superheroics of, well, a superhero movie. But there might be a little too much time between the villain's introduction and his second appearance in the story. It's like the movie can't really get going until it finishes a car chase scene in Korea, because I guess Age of Ultron's car chase scene in Korea just wasn't enough. The final battle also gives me some Phantom Menace flashbacks, with the main villain dueling some people while there's a spaceship combat going on and some ground war in the green field. Just a lot going on at once. The music is terrific and is one of the very few MCU movies where the music is actually a noticeable component of the movie instead of just mood-setting background noise. The costumes and production design are also top-notch, of course, on par with the best of the MCU. I'm glad this movie brought the MCU not just its first Oscar, but its first 3. In addition, its directorial style is noticeable, and not just in that it's tonally similar to the director's previous work, like, say, the James Gunn MCU movies. One funny thing is that whether T'Challa or Killmonger sits on the throne, they never stay seated for more than like a minute before getting back up and leaving the room. Black Panther has some noticeable issues, but its high points are higher than what most of the MCU even aspires to. It falls short of the Winter Soldier in the action department, maybe the dialogue isn't as snappy as in the Avengers, but it's got an instantly engaging setting, a cast of great characters with the best use of music the MCU has to offer, much of its best direction, among its best production design, and some bits of commentary on social issues that are more blunt than most modern blockbusters even dare to try. It won't click with everyone, but it will click with nearly everyone, and since it's one of the more serious MCU films, I even feel comfortable recommending it to people who aren't fans of the MCU as a whole. Check it out.
The real question is, what are those?
Clearly, you've never made an omelet.
You beat me by 1 second.
We have 2 credit scenes, the first of which probably should have just been the end of the movie, and the second of which shows us that Bucky is being rehabilitated of his brainwashing and is no longer being kept in the fridge to preserve freshness.
Dread it. Run from it. Destiny still arrives.